In today's video, we're going to keep talking about fabric terminology, focusing mostly on knits and patterns. Hi friends, welcome back to So Obvious. I'm Apolilook. In my last video, we learned that woven fabrics have a warp and a weft. Knit fabrics have them too, but they're a little bit different. Unlike woven fabrics, knits don't have a warp and a weft. They are either a warp or a weft, and it depends on how the fabric was made. In my last video, we also learned that knit fabrics can be made from one or more threads. The thread can also be called a yarn. A knit fabric made with multiple yarns is known as a warp fabric because it is knitted in columns, and each column is called a wale. Warp knitted fabric is usually made with machinery, and because it was knitted on its warp, it has very little to no stretch when you pull it vertically. However, because they are machine made, warp knitted fabrics are a lot easier to cut and sew with. A knitted fabric from one single yarn is called the weft fabric because the fabric is built row by row that goes horizontally, also known as courses. Weft knitted fabric can be either machine made or handmade. It's also important to remember that if a thread or yarn breaks on a weft knitted fabric, the whole fabric could unravel, and you wouldn't have that problem with a warp knitted fabric. Now let's talk about the stretchy part of knit fabrics. When it comes to stretch, we have either a two-way or a four-way stretch. A two-way is a fabric that can only be stretched in one direction. Usually, a warp fabric can only be stretched from side to side. A four-way is a fabric that can be stretched in any direction. Usually, a weft fabric can go in any direction. The degree of stretchiness varies from fabric to fabrics, especially now that we have a lot of synthetic fabrics. Even some woven fabrics have some stretchiness to them. Speaking of synthetic fabric, let's talk about the difference between natural and synthetic fabrics. Natural fabrics are made from natural fibers. These are fabrics that would come from either nature or animals. Some examples of natural fabrics are wool, cotton, bamboo, silk. Synthetic fabrics are fabrics made from fibers that are man-made. Some man-made fibers are acrylic, nylon, polyester. Polyester is going to be my drag name. It's important to keep in mind that with all the technology we have today, it is very common to have a fabric that has both natural and synthetic fibers. Now let's talk about patterns and prints. We've talked a lot about how fabric is made and how it feels. Now we're going to talk about how it looks. A pattern is a repeated design that can be woven or embroidered into fabric. Some fabrics that have some patterns embroidered or woven into them are Chinese silk, jacquard fabrics, houndstooth. A print is a design that is put on top of a pre-made fabric. It can be done through digital printing, screen printing, dyeing, or marbling. An easy way to tell whether a design is a pattern or a print is to look on the wrong side of the fabric. As you can see, this fabric is nice and colorful on the right side, but then on the wrong side, it's not really there. That tells you that this design was printed on top of the pre-made fabric. Now let's talk about the different types of prints and patterns. We have three major categories: one-way, two-way, and all over. One-way patterns are patterns that go in the same direction. For example, if you have a bunch of flowers and all the flowers are going in the same direction, that means that you will want to make sure that you cut your patterns all following that same direction. Otherwise, you'll get done and you're going to have one leg where all the flowers go up, and the other leg, all the flowers are going to be facing down. A one-way pattern dictates the way you have to cut your pattern pieces. A tip I can give you is if you're gonna buy a pattern that only goes one way, you should get at least an extra yard of fabric, because you might not be able to put all your pattern pieces as close together as possible as you would with a different type of pattern. A two-way pattern is a pattern that goes both ways. Both ways. It still usually goes up and down, but it doesn't dictate which way you can lay your pattern pieces as long as the grain line still follows the selvage edge. An all-over pattern is a pattern that goes all over. Alright guys, well that's all the terminology that I have for you today. I hope that with this video and my last video you learned a lot about fabrics. Make sure you come back on Sunday and next Wednesday because both videos are going to be focusing on different types of hems. If you like this video, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. If you didn't like it, you should probably do that anyway, because let's face it, what else do you got to do? Okay, bye.